Hey guys, how's it going? Master Cal here, and today I'm going to be doing the fourth video of my 2021 NFL offseason preview series, which is going to be for the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons finished at 4-12, which is which after 2 seasons of being 7-9, is a continued decline for a team that blew obviously that 20-3 lead in the Super Bowl that time ago. And a lot of the same problems from the last couple of units were still there. Matt Ryan taking way too many sacks, the defense underwhelming, lack of a running game. So Falcons finally decided to clean up shop. They fired Dan Quinn after they got to an 0-5 start. His replacement is Arthur Smith, who has pretty much been the main reason behind Ryan Tannehill's resurgence in Tennessee. And add the fact that the Titans' offense was outstanding last year, especially because of Derrick Henry, of course. We'll see if he can bring that same toughness and resurgence to Atlanta as their aging core is still there. And as we'll get to it, their core is likely to stay around for this season for cap reasons. Speaking of cap space, the Falcons currently are about minus $31.69 million over the cap. And that's with a caveat of the fact that they only have 42 players in their contract, which means that they have to add basically 9 more players on minimum deals, which would be which is because the top 51 players in their contract count against the cap, so that number is slightly higher as a result. So that means they have quite a bit of work to do to get under the cap. So without further ado, let's get to their starters. So first off is Matt Ryan at quarterback. He still had a statistically decent season, but you have to wonder, like, he's getting up there in age. He's like, I think he's like 34, 35 years old, taking a lot of sacks, and so we'll see how it goes. His contract is untradeable and uncuttable at this point, so he's going to be the quarterback this year. At running back is Ito Smith, who kind of was buried behind the depth chart last year behind Todd Gurley and Brian Hill, but both of those guys are free agents at the moment. The Falcons' running game has steadily declined every year since Kyle Shanahan left to take the 49ers head coaching job, so the Falcons, I think, are hoping that Arthur Smith can kind of revitalize that running game. Onto the offensive line, you got Jake Matthews, first rounder from 2014 at left tackle. James Carpenter, who's a veteran, former Seahawk, former New York Jet. He's been with the Falcons the past 2 years at left guard. Matt Hennessy, third-round pick last year out of Temple, the brother of the Jets' long snapper, is at center. Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry, who were both first-round picks in 2019 at left guard or right guard and right tackle, respectively. The unit was a bit better than last year, and it was healthier than last year's unit, but it still gave up too many sacks. So we'll have to see kind of what will go on with that. Wide receiver, you got Julio Jones. Jones had a disappointing season. He was hampered by a nagging hamstring injury, and as a result, he played in just 7 games. That opened up opportunities for the other wide receivers, though, and Calvin Ridley responded with his best season as a pro. And then Russell Gage also showed some promise as well. Hayden Hurst at tight end, former first-round pick of the Baltimore Ravens in 2018. He was traded to Atlanta last offseason, and he had a decent showing for them after the Falcons elected to let Austin Hooper depart in free agency. On defense, you got Dante Fowler Jr., who's in the second year of a 3-year contract that he signed with the Falcons. After posting his best season as a pro with the LA Rams in 2019, unfortunately, he followed it up with I think just like a 2 or a 3 sack season, so that was obviously very disappointing. Grady Jarrett at the defensive tackle position. He's gone from 5th-round pick to a top 5 interior defensive lineman in the NFL. Tyler Davison at the other defensive tackle position, former Saint. He's been with the Falcons the past 1 or 2 seasons. And then Alan Bailey, longtime Chief, who's set to enter his 3rd year with the Falcons. Linebacker, you got Deion Jones, who is a pretty good player. A few years ago, he was one of the top linebackers in the game. He isn't really talked about as much right now, probably because the Falcons as a whole defense isn't that good, but he's still a pretty good player. Foye Sade Oluokun, who was their number 2 linebacker last year, and then Michael Walker, 4th rounder out of Fresno State last year, who impressed out of camp, especially in coverage, and was their number 3 linebacker. At cornerback, you got A.J. Terrell, 1st rounder out of Clemson, who had an up and down rookie season. He had a bout with COVID. I think he might have had a nagging injury too that limited him to some time. And then I don't remember who is the second outside corner who's in the slot. There's Isaiah Oliver, who I think was a 3rd round pick in 2018 out of Colorado, and then Kendall Sheffield, who was a 4th rounder in 2019 out of Ohio State. At safety, you got Ricardo Allen, who's in the final year of his contract, and then Jalen Hawkins, who was a 4th rounder in 2020 out of Cal. Josh Harris is their long snapper. Sterling Hofreiter, I think that's how his name is pronounced, is the punter. They did not have a kicker under contract when the season ended. Pro Bowl kicker Younghoe Koo is an exclusive rights free agent, so the Falcons will likely look to bring him back. They did sign Elliott Fry, who has been around the league with the Ravens and the Bears, but he hasn't been able to lock down a kicking job. They signed him to a futures deal. So those are the Falcons starters. Now let's take a look at their free agents. The first of which being center Alex Mack, former 1st rounder of the Browns. He just played out a 5-year deal with the Falcons that he signed in 2016, and he was their starting center for most of the season last year, except till the end when he missed time due to injury. Given the fact that the Falcons just drafted Hennessy, they might want to roll with him as their starting center. And Mack recently said that he is interested in reuniting with Shanahan in San Francisco. So if the Niners end up cutting Weston Richburg, Mack could be a nice option for them. And then Todd Gurley, whose fall from greatness obviously is well documented, went from being one of the top running backs in the game in 2018 to having knee issues in 2019, and then was released by the Rams after the 2019 season. Caught on with the Falcons since he played his college ball at Georgia, but unfortunately Gurley had a very poor season. So his stock continued to fall. Charles Harris, a former 1st rounder of the Miami Dolphins in 2017, and he has been such a disappointment that the Dolphins ended up trading him after the 2020 draft to the Falcons for a 7th round pick in 2021. He actually and he actually had some solid moments with the Falcons. So yeah, you got Keanu O'Neal at safety, 1st rounder in 2016 by the Falcons, who was pretty good his first 2 seasons in the league. Unfortunately, missed a lot of his 3rd and 4th seasons due to injury. But he was mostly healthy in year 5, and he could be in the cash in free agency potentially elsewhere. Brian Hill at running back, who essentially took over for Todd Gurley late in the season. Backup quarterback Matt Schaub has already announced his retirement. Cornerback Blighty Ray Wilson, center Justin McCray, tight end Luke Stalker, cornerback Leroy Reynolds, corner Darqueze Dennard, former 1st rounder of the Cincinnati Bengals in 2014, safety Sherrod Niesman, tackle John Wetzel, wide receiver Laquan Treadwell, former 1st rounder of the Vikings, who has not panned out, defensive end Steven Means, who played the most snaps on that defensive line, I think, linebacker Edmund Robinson, 3rd safety DeMonte KZ. KZ will be rehabbing from an Achilles injury he suffered, I think it was in week 5 of the season. The aforementioned Koo. Wide receiver Brandon Powell is an exclusive rights free agent. Corner Tyler Hall, exclusive rights free agent. Tackle Matt Gono is a restricted free agent. Defensive end Jacob Tuioti Mariner is an exclusive rights free agent. Tight end Jaden Graham is an exclusive rights free agent. And finally, wide receiver Christian Blake is an exclusive rights free agent. So, now looking as far as positions of need go, I would say probably they need to add an offensive lineman, seeing as their offensive line underwhelmed. Definitely running back because of their running game struggles in the past couple of seasons. Let's see. And then they'll probably need a safety, I think. Maybe they could use another guy at linebacker, and maybe they could use even more young talent on defense. They do have some defensive line depth. You got John Kaminsky, you got Marlon Davidson. So, like, the Falcons don't have a lot of the Falcons don't have a bad team, I don't think. Like, it's an older team with some unproven young draft picks. they just need the right coaching staff, I think, to get the most out of it. And especially in a season where where the Saints are going to be taking a step back because of Drew Brees' likely retirement and them being well over the cap, and the Panthers are continuing their rebuild. The Buccaneers are going to try to keep as much of their Super Bowl winning core intact. The Falcons could potentially have a shot if they get the right coaching staff together. The Falcons also might be changing defensive schemes from 4-3 to 3-4 under veteran defensive coordinator Dean Pease. So we'll keep an eye on that if they do indeed change defensive schemes. All right, so as far as cap casualties, as they are going to have to make a lot of moves to free up space. So the most obvious ones that jump up to me would be James Carpenter, Alan Bailey, and Ricardo Allen. Those three players are older players, and they have just too high of salaries for what their value is. So if the Falcons were to cut those three players, that would save them in the realm of like 18 to 20 million in cap space, which is a good start. But that means they'd still have like 11 to like 14 million in cap space so to work with. The reason why they're so over the cap is because they have four players with a cap hit more than $20 million, and that would be Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Jake Matthews, and Grady Jarrett as those four players. So you can imagine that probably a restructure for those contracts to push back cap salary into later years, lower their cap hits could be in order. And then I don't really know as far as other cuts go because a lot of their guys are, quite a bit of these guys are on rookie deals, like Calvin Ridley, Lindstrom, McGarry, Hurst, Gage, Alucon, Walker, Terrell, like a lot of these guys are on rookie deals. I think the Falcons will keep Dante Fowler despite the disappointing season. Like releasing him would free up just about $3 million or so in cap space, so probably not worth it, especially if they do switch to a 3-4 scheme, which he has fared better in than in the 4-3 scheme. So and then if they do release Carpenter, that that is where the need on their offensive line would come into play. Like they'll need someone either at left guard or at center because they could put Hennessy at left guard and then sign somebody at center, or they could have Hennessy be their starting center and sign a guard. So they probably won't have a lot of money to play towards the top of the market, like the Joe Thuney's, the Corey Linsleys, the Austin Riders of the world. And then as far as releasing Alan Bailey goes, probably they might be changing defensive schemes there, and they have younger players, as I mentioned before, Davidson and Kaminsky. And then releasing Ricardo Allen would make safety a big need, and if they aren't able to re-sign Keanu O'Neal, they're going to have to find replacements, presumably in the draft. I think the biggest question this offseason is going to be, are the Falcons going to draft a quarterback 4th overall? If Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, because presumably they'll be able to get at least one of those three, if not two of those three at the number 4 spot. So do they take a guy, have him sit behind Matt Ryan, and then maybe trade him after a year when his contract isn't as unmovable as it is at the moment? If that is, though, the Falcons could be signifying the start of a rebuild, and seeing as they brought in Arthur Smith, they may try to get the most out of one more run with the current core that's in place. So that's going to do it for this video. We will see if the Falcons, again, if they're going to start a rebuild or if they're going to try to keep this core intact, at least for the time being. And unfortunately, given their cap situation, they can't really tear the whole place down at the moment. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next video in this off-season preview series.